I did not belong in that theater, honey. How much do you know about the Boxcar Children?
I read a little bit of those books, but...
I read the first book in 1989. So there was, for one day only, at 4 p.m., there was a showing. It was a Fathom event screening over at the movie theater of the Boxcar Children in Surprise Island. I think
Surprise
I got that right. Just wait for the surprise. You'll be wildly underwhelmed. This day already started out bad. I hurt at the gym earlier, I hurt my neck really, really fucking bad and had to go get that worked on for a while. And then I'm like, God, I don't know if I sat with the same neck pain in front row for Pitch Perfect 3. I don't know if I can do this again with this Boxcar Children movie.
How many people were in the theater?
Just wait for the surprise.
Oh. Yeah, I kept on asking you. I was like, oh, so can you tell me more about it? And you're like, no, I gotta save this.
Oh, yeah. So, I'm like, no, I love all you out there, so I'll go see this movie at 4 p.m., and I love you most of all, which is why I took the bullet and went to go see this by myself. And I was hoping, I was like, am I going to be the only one in this theater again? Is this going to be like when Brian and I went to that 10 a.m. screening of Barbie Starlight Adventure? So I walk in the theater, and there was a mom and her 2 kids in front of me. And at first I thought like, oh, they might be here to see this, but the kid had on a Flash t-shirt. So I was like, okay, well, maybe they're here to see something else, like one of the summer movies or something. No, this mom and her 2 kids paid to go see the Boxcar Children movie, and I'm in line right behind them, looking like this, going up to the kid.
One for Boxcar
One
Children.
for the Boxcar Children in Surprise Island. That mom looked at me like, what in the hell are you doing? And having seen this movie, I'll bet you 5 minutes into that movie, that kid with the Flash shirt was like, Mom is lame as fuck.
Well, maybe she was a nanny or something.
I don't know, I didn't ask.
I know, why would you?
Why was I at the Boxcar Children in Surprise Island at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday? And so I walk in there, it's me sitting in our usual spot, and it was in the giant theater in there. It's me sitting in the usual spot, and the family sitting way the fuck behind me. And then this old guy comes walking in by himself. Had to be in his 70s, just dirty, gut hanging out.
He must be a huge fan, though.
He was wearing a long overcoat with freaking wiry-ass gray hair, and I was sitting there like, this is not the kind of surprise I want in this. I don't like the look of this Surprise Island. So, but at the same time, I was like, thank God I'm now not the most creepy person in this fucking theater. And I sat there, again, my neck and back killing me. I think I zonked out for like a little bit because the movie hadn't started, and I realized like, oh yeah, it's like 10 after. I noticed because the mom got up to like tell me you should probably start the movie. And
so she was complaining a little bit because it was...
No, well, I mean, the movie just... I've seen this before with Fathom screenings where sometimes they don't kick on and someone has to get up.
Timing or something.
Yeah, because this was supposed to be at 4, and so... Whoa. I did read the first book, and this movie is a sequel. I don't know when the first movie came out, but there was this pre-show at the beginning that was talking a little bit about the first movie. The first book, yeah, I read in like 2nd grade, because we read it in school, and I remembered enough. Like, it's 4 orphan kids, and they live in a boxcar, and then by the end of it, they go to live with their grandfather. I'm sorry to spoil that for you, but like this.
Oh man.
It's a series of books. There's like fucking several of them.
Yeah, because I read like at least a few of them, I think, but it's been so long.
This one is the second book, and I don't know if we had to read the second book in school. I remember reading the first one. I mean, you can keep that cracked a little. I was just rolling this up.
There's been a lot of bugs in our house recently, so it's kind of been freaking
This is our house, by the way.
Oh, I mean, I've been more scared recently about bugs coming in.
So last night we rewatched Ants, and I hadn't seen Ants
since it first came out, right?
Well,
like,
I know it came out in '98, and I saw it in the theater, and I think I saw it on video again not long after that, because I really liked the movie a lot, but I hadn't seen it in so long, and so we watched it last night, and I was like, this is still really funny. I really fucking love this movie. Like, This really fucking holds up. And you and I were talking about the animation in it.
Yeah, I was like, because some scenes were kind of creepy, for me at least, because it looks a little bit like E.T.
With Z?
Z, yeah. It's dated. It felt like a video game.
Oh, boy, you should have been there at the shit that I watched tonight. I was fine with the animation in Ants. Wait, it looked like a 1998 theatrical, but it still.
You said it was the second animated CGI.
Technically the third. But it was like
the first for DreamWorks, I think, right?
Yeah.
Wait, so was the movie you saw tonight? Was that CGI? Yeah. Oh. You didn't want to tell me anything about it. You were
I didn't mean that as in like duh. I meant that as in like
No,
it's the most haunting thing about this fucking movie.
I didn't know whether or not, because I was like, can you tell me a little bit more about the plot? And you were like, just wait.
Yeah, so Ants to me looked like something that was 20 years old, but it still looked like something that was theatrical. Like, it still looked like something that had a big budget behind it. Like, between the detailing and like all the action and stuff going on in the background, and it had big scope to it. Like, in the faces and stuff, sure, you can tell it's about 20 years old, but it still looks...
You can forgive it.
I didn't even have a problem with it. I mean, it just looked...
It's kind of creepy.
It wasn't to me, but like, I mean, it was still leaps and bounds over shit like fucking Norm of the North and shit like that. And this movie...
that came out like, what?
A couple years ago. This movie that I saw, if you were creeped out by ants, this shit will haunt your fucking nightmares.
You'll have to show me then, because...
Oh, man. Like... This should not have been viewed on a big screen. I don't care if it was for one screening only. This should not have been computer animated. This should have been live action, or, because this could have been live action, or, I don't know, 2D with the budget that they had for it, and if this thing was 2D animation, it would have looked probably like a Good Times movie.
Yeah, I was thinking like, first I thought it was 2D animation. I was like, because that sounds like it would have been more 2D or live action, and you said...
This looked like watching...
CGI, and I was like, really? That's interesting.
This movie is from the director of Spawn, which I found that out later.
Oh, Spawn, the one with Adrian Brody?
No. Are you thinking of Splice? No, I like Splice. No, Spawn, though. The one with John Leguizamo is the fat clown, and Michael Jai White plays Spawn. It's not very good. And, the visual effects in this are on par with what the visual effects look like in Spawn. So... Except it's an entire movie of that. This looked like watching a Nintendo 64 game on the big screen.
You'll have to show me.
The biggest screen that they had in there. These characters look dead. Like, there is no soul in any single one of them. Like, their faces look like, when they're sitting there petting the dog, like, wide-eyed, and like, they don't look like eyes. They look like they are made of like porcelain, and someone just painted flat eyes on them. I'm like, there is not any kind of thing in there. There's a part where they're in sunlight, and like, there's like this glow coming from his skin. The kid looks hollow, and like someone stuck a candle in him.
I feel like terrifying CGI is way worse than terrifying 2D animation.
It's so much worse. That's what I mean when I say,
Yeah,
like, if this was 2D, it would have looked like a Good Times movie, and sure, that would have looked cheap,
It would
but
have looked weird, but it's not as scary as, like, something like, from,
this,
what's that movie called? That Phelan did? Rhapsody Kids.
oh,
Like,
well, it
that
looked a little
is-
better than that.
Okay, but I mean, like, if you compare Rhapsody Kids to, like, one of the Dingo movies he's done, it's like, that's way more terrifying looking than the Dingo movies he's done, or
I don't
reviewed, because
know.
those are really scary looking, and I grew up with, like, CGI when it was kind of, developing with it. And it's creepy, like,
When they
because
eat-
I've showed you things that I'm like, oh, I grew up with this, and from early 2000s, you're like, I'm so sorry you had it.
This movie, though, like, even when they're eating, it's terrifying. When they're cutting a whole pie out and it just a whole piece disappears into their mouth. The grandfather in this movie, who, for whatever reason, looks like Joseph Stalin, that was distracting. And he's got this big mustache, but he doesn't have, like, an upper lip. So it just looks like these teeth hanging
that's
down from his,
terrifying.
like, kids, hey. And
No children.
and it's Martin Sheen doing his voice. So this movie and they have a dog in it. They have a dog with these beady marble eyes that look like the dog has been stuffed, and they just stuck these little dark haunting marble eyes on the dog. And later on, it's even more horrifying because they make the kid a birthday cake at one point, and on top of the cake is supposed to be like a little figurine of the dog. Only what they did was they just took the animated model of the dog and shrunk it down so they could just stick it on top of the cake to make it look like a cake topper. And it looks like they just shrunk their
scary.
dog and stuck him on top of the cake. This is the scariest movie I've seen all year long.
You'll have to show me a lot of those screenshots.
The plot of this movie is, I would say that it's a series of events working out perfectly fine, but that would imply that there's any kind of conflict in this film. Because
Is it like one of those movies where there's like little like conflicts going on, where it was like meant to be kind of maybe a TV show?
it feels like they were maybe too literal in adapting the book. Maybe. I don't know. But so the plot is that the four kids are now living with their grandfather, and the opening scene is the grandfather saying, "Oh, by the way, I never told you kids this, but we own an island." So and Grandpa sends the four kids over the summer to live in a barn on the island, like by themselves for the most part. Like there's a couple other people on the island, but like all I can think of in my head is like Grandpa's had enough of these kids' shit and just wants to send them off to a fucking island for the summer.
Thanks, Grandpa.
Where they're making the most of their shit. But they're never upset. Everyone is like annoyingly happy in this. Like, what I mean by that is like, do you remember on The Critic, whenever there would be like the annoying kid, like actor in one of his movies, and it was always that overly cute, like he would say like, you're not just my dad, you're my bestest friend.
Yeah, I remember that. It's kind of like that.
It's like that. So I didn't know how long this movie was gonna be, and when I say slow, whoa, like the first half of this movie, which is a slog of a 90 minutes, the first half of this movie is... there's one scene where the kids are just sitting around the table gluing flowers to pieces of paper, not saying a damn word. There's, like...
I feel so bad for any child that had to sit through this. The parent was, hey, this will be entertaining.
Oh, there's parts where they're like, I think we should make peas tonight. I agree, we should make peas tonight. And then they do, and it tastes delicious. And the peas are kind of square. And then they're like, here's an example of some conflict. they wake up and it's raining and they go, today's a clam chowder day. Let's make clam chowder. And they're like, oh, but the onions are out in the garden. Oh, well, I'll just go out there and get them. Oh, but it's raining. I'm going to get my clothes all wet. And then the little kid is like, but you could wear your swim trunks. And dude's like, you're right, I could. And then he goes out there and gets onions and they make delicious clam chowder. Oh, and by the way, speaking of water, the way the animation is, their hair is like perfectly styled and looks exactly the same throughout the whole movie, including when they get
so
wet.
lazy.
When they get wet, get hit by waves, when they're swimming in the ocean, their hair remains exactly the same. And I have an amazing piece of casting for you on this movie.
Okay, tell me.
So there's another guy on the island, and at first I thought he was supposed to be another teenager, but I think he's maybe supposed to be in his 20s, and he's a character named Joe, who he worked at a museum at one point, but injured himself, so now he's kind of hiding out on this island, and he makes friends with the kids, and it's them, like, they're friends, they make clam chowder together, they go out and get seaweed and shit, and it's Dane DeHaan.
Aw, poor guy.
I'm like, dude!
It's like, he's having really bad luck lately.
I mean, but at the same time, like, Martin Sheen is in this, J.K. Simmons is in this, Joey King is in this. Like, it's not like Dane DeHaan's like the only name in this. I'm assuming like maybe they're just fans of the books or something like that. Like, but so Dane DeHaan,
it's a good paycheck,
in his Dane DeHaan voice, is like just comes out. It's like, I know what that is. That's rockweed. Watch this. This will be really cool. Give me a piece of paper.
Sounds creepy.
And like it's weird seeing like. So, oh man. So it's like Dane DeHaan and all these kids, and the youngest kid is always like, that's Joe. He's my bestest friend, which he says 5 or 6 times in this movie.
That's how people talk. My bestest friend.
The first book was written in the 20s, and then it was revised in the 40s, and then I think they continued on into the 70s. I'm not sure when this one was written, but I think this movie is taking place in the present. The way that some characters...
They dress like...
Yeah! I mean, Grandpa drives an old car, but the way some characters look, it seems like it's in the present. But no one talks like that. Like this kid who's like, you're my bestest friend. Well, except for my sisters and brother and the dog. And then when Dane DeHaan is busy doing something else, the kid's like, I wanted to introduce Joe to our new friend. Joe's my bestest friend. Oh, I'm sorry, Joe had to go into town. And the kid says, oh, that makes me cross.
I don't know anyone who says that.
Well, I don't know.
I mean,
ask someone who was around in the 40s.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably... I mean, obviously it's slang from that time, but it's like...
For...
oh my god, that's the bee's knees.
Yeah, it was like shit like that. And
That's pajamas.
The closest anything comes to happening in this movie. There's like a minute where it cranks from 0 to 11, and then really quickly they turn that dial back down, because maybe the mom went out to complain again. So, at one point, they go into a cave. And I never knew...
A cave?
I never knew when a plot was gonna start in this movie. Like, I seriously didn't. I was like, is this gonna... I know a lot of these books are mystery books, I think, but like, or most of them have the word mystery in the title. I'm like, is something gonna happen here? Or are they really just gonna sit around and like scrapbook for 90 minutes? So like, they more or less do, but there's a part where they go into a cave and they find some arrowheads in there, and then a wave comes in and washes them out, and then they're in there with Dane DeHaan, and they find like an arrowhead. And he's like, that's an arrowhead. And they're like, you're smart, Joe. Yeah, I worked in a museum. And so, so like then the littlest kid comes in with this giant bone, and he goes like, I found a dog bone. And Dane DeHaan's like, no, that's from a person. And the kid's like, blah!
That's scary.
And then it pans down, and there's just like a human skeleton laying there. And that's when I was like, okay, is this gonna... Are they gonna be solving a mystery of some corpse that they fucking found in here?
Sounds like if Nancy Drew or something, or the Hardy Boys, like,
No, this
came
is...
out and it was really cheap or something.
That's
That's
wrong?
not
it, because this plot line is dropped a minute later. Because Dane
Oh.
DeHaan goes like, oh, well, you know, this island's old. There's a lot of, like, you know, things like that laying around here. And then they go on to other things. They watch Dane DeHaan play the violin, in which his fingers are not moving.
This movie sounds so boring.
Like, oh, fuck me. Like, Dane DeHaan, like, playing, like, the violin, and like, you're so talented, and I'm like, you just found a skeleton. Like,
that's impressing to them now.
and I'm
They have
like,
low standards.
I thought that the skeleton was gonna be the surprise of Surprise Island. It's not. The surprise is that it turns out Dane DeHaan is their cousin. That's the twist.
That's a twist. What a lousy twist. That's not even a twist. It's just like
There's wholesome, and then there's this. I'm fine with wholesome. Like, there's
Yeah.
been...
like Leap. That was wholesome.
Yeah, and that's a better Dane DeHaan animated movie.
I mean, that's
I mean, that
wholesome.
was the ballerina version, but like...
whatever. I don't.
I
mean,
I think from what I hear, there's a big difference between the two.
we watched it together.
We
I
watched
mean,
Ballerina.
That's wholesome. I mean, it's not great, but it's like, whatever. I'll show a 2-year-old this.
I'm not just being cynical towards this movie. Like, wholesome is fine. This movie was like sitting there watching a bowl of milk for 90 minutes. Like, to the point to where it turns out it's the littlest kid's, Benny. It's his, birthday, and they go like, Benny, it's your birthday! You can have anything! What do you want? And Benny goes, I want a bottle of milk! And then they have cream together.
It sounds really boring. Even you, like, talking about it, just... I'm like, I feel like I should be more enjoying the way you're describing it, because not that you're being boring. But
I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best.
You're like explaining this movie, and I just want to be like, oh, well, that sounds awful, but it just comes across as boring.
It's very fucking boring. Like, I don't know what the first one is like. I don't. I don't know what the first movie is like. Maybe the first movie is better than this. Maybe, like... Because look, like, even if the animation was like this, and yes, there's plenty of ways you can make fun of the haunting-ass animation in this movie, but if the script was solid, that would be one thing. I don't know if the first movie is like this, but this was like... There's no reason this should have been in theaters.
What were we talking... God, what was the movie we were talking about recently where it's like, this shows that a bad script, if... What was that?
Are you talking about an animated movie?
Yeah.
Oh, Sergeant Stubby. Where we liked Sergeant Stubby was kind of low budgeted, but the script was certainly solid.
And it shows, like, even with, like, kind of a... Not a boring script, but it was something that could have been really bad.
Sergeant Stubby?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't.
It shows that those kind of movies can be successful if you have a really low budget.
This is like something that, like, if this was around when I was in grade school, they probably would have put this in. If this was a live action film, it would have been something like the Buttercream Gang, but more happened in that. Like, this would have been more like, Buttercream Gang in Secret of Treasure Mountain. But even more shit happened in that movie than in this fucking movie.
Which I guess was made by Mormons, the second one?
No, the company, they're not... The company that made the feature film for families, I believe is what they're called. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that company is like... They have people of various different religions working with them. Like, they're not specific to one religion, but a lot of Mormons, I believe, do work for or did at least. So there were a lot of Mormon filmmakers and actors that were behind the Buttercream Gang movies. Even though they're not like Hailstorm or some of those other trailers we watched the other night.
Yeah.
This I wish that like Hailstorm did this freaking movie. Like at least it would have been interesting.
Yeah, Hailstorm, you should check that out if you're listening to this. Hailstorm's really funny. Well, not objectively speaking, but it is.
I sat there during this movie just hitting myself on the head
just
several times because maybe I would just start seeing stars and that would be more interesting to look at than the movie, because again, like I said, there's no reason that this thing is pushing 90 minutes long. This should not be in theaters. This should be something that your grandma buys you on Christmas and then you're like, yeah, okay. And you just set it down and go back to playing your video game.
Yeah, that reminds me, I know this is kind of off topic, but my grandma bought me like this movie called Bugs Off, or Bug Off. Have you ever heard of that?
No,
It always had like 50% off or something.
Yeah.
On it, and
yeah, this looked.
Oh my god! There's a spider.
Where? Oh. Oh, where at? Oh, he's fine.
Oh my god.
He's just really curious about the movie. He wants to know what happened.
Can you roll up the window?
This is the surprise on Surprise Island. There's not much else. I got nothing else about this movie. I don't recommend this at all. I need to... Come the end of the year, I'm like, I don't usually put like a 1 day only screening of a Fathom event on like my worst of list, but this one's gonna be a fucking candidate. Here, I'll open the door.
Sorry, I have like crippling...
Just get some air.
I have like crippling arachnophobia. I'm sorry. I end up being...
No, he's on the outside.
Okay, good. Cool.
But
close the door.
Yeah. He's coming back.
He's so scary.
Let's go watch Spiders 3D.
Oh my god.
All right, everyone. Thanks for watching.
I didn't close this off with a scary, like...
That was a bigger surprise than anything in Surprise Island. I wish there was a giant fucking spider in the movie. All right, everyone.
Sorry.
Take care.
Thanks for watching.